So, what's the real difference between what's right and what's legal? It's a question that has kept thinkers up at night for centuries, and it really gets to the very core of how we build our societies. In this explainer, we're going to pull apart the tricky relationship between morality, law, and justice. We'll see how our understanding of these massive ideas has shifted over time. All right, let's dive in.
Let's just kick things off with a huge question. Is everything that's legal also moral? And on the flip side, is everything that's moral also legal? The answer, as you probably guessed, is a big no. And honestly, that's where things get really, really interesting. This is the central puzzle we're going to unpack today.
So, how do we even begin to make sense of this? Well, think of it this way. We have two major systems that guide our behavior, law and morality. They're kind of like two different operating systems running our society. And yeah, they often work together, but they have totally different rulebooks and, believe me, very different ways of keeping us all in line.
Okay, let's start with law. The word itself actually gives us a pretty big hint. It comes from the Latin directus, which means straight. And that is exactly what law tries to do. It's designed to keep society on a straight, predictable path. These are the external rules, the ones written down that we all have to follow.
So, what really makes a law a law? Well, it boils down to three key things. First, it's bilateral, meaning it's a two-way street. Think about a job contract. You have a right to get paid, and your boss has a duty to pay you. See? Rights and duties. Second, law is external. These rules exist out in the world, completely separate from us as individuals. We're just born into them. And finally, and this is the really big one, law is coercible. If you break a law, there are real consequences. An external power, like the state, can actually step in and force you to comply.
Now, let's flip that coin over and look at morality. This word comes from the Latin mores, which basically just means customs. So if law is society's external rulebook, then morality is our own internal compass. It's that personal code of conduct, pointing us toward what we, as individuals, believe is good. It's not about what society says we have to do, it's about who we decide we want to be.
And right here is where you see the huge difference. The traits of morality are pretty much the exact opposite of laws. For one, it's unilateral. It's all about the duties we put on ourselves, not on other people. It's also internal. It's a code we build from our own lives, our own experiences. And this is so important. It's incoercible. Nobody can force you to be a good person. The only real punishment for breaking your own moral code, it's the one you give yourself, like a guilty conscience.
So let's just lay it all out side by side. This table really shows the fundamental split. Law's source, external. Morality's internal. The scope of law is bilateral. It creates rights and duties between people. But morality is unilateral. It's only about the duties we give ourselves. And enforcement? Law is coercible. It can be forced. Morality has to be spontaneous, chosen freely. The last row sums it all up perfectly. Law is heteronomous, a fancy word meaning its rules come from an outside authority. Society. Morality is autonomous. It's self-governing, built by you, for you.
Okay, so we've established that law and morality are two very different beasts. But of course, they don't just exist in separate bubbles. They are constantly bumping into each other, influencing one another. So how can we actually picture that relationship? Well, thinkers have come up with a few really helpful ways to visualize it.
First up, we have the concentric circles theory. Just picture two circles, one snuggled right inside the other. The big outer circle, that's morality. The smaller one inside, that's law. In this way of thinking, for a law to even be a valid law, it has to be moral. But, and this is key, not every moral value gets turned into a law. For example, most of us would agree that being generous is a good moral thing, right? But there's no law out there that can force you to be generous.
All right, next up is the intersecting circles theory. Think of a classic Venn diagram. You've got law and morality as two separate circles, but they overlap there in the middle. That shared space, that's where you find things that are both illegal and immoral. Think theft or murder. But each circle also has its own turf, its own exclusive territory. You've got things that are purely legal issues and things that are purely moral ones.
And finally, we've got the most extreme view, the independent circles theory. In this model, law and morality are two totally separate systems. They're like parallel universes that never ever cross paths. According to this idea, a law is a law just because it's an official rule, full stop. Whether it's good or bad is a completely separate conversation that has nothing to do with its legality.
So we have law and we have morality, but what's the point of it all? What are they really aiming for? Well, a lot of the time, the answer is justice. Justice is the big idea, right? It's the ultimate goal that both our laws and our moral codes are supposed to be striving for. But what in the world does that word actually mean?
To get a handle on justice, we've got to go way back to its roots. Our modern image of Lady Justice actually comes from two ancient goddesses. On the left, you've got the Greek Dike, that's pronounced Dike, and on the right, the Roman Justitia, or Justitia. Now you can see they both have a sword and scales, but the tiny differences between them tell a huge story about how our idea of justice first started to take shape.
Let's really zoom in on that symbolism. The Greek goddess Dike, her eyes are wide open, and her sword is up, ready to go. She's all about jumping into the fight to create equality. But the Roman version, Justitia, she's blindfolded. This is huge. It represents impartiality, that powerful idea that justice shouldn't care about your wealth, your status, or your power. And notice her sword is resting, a symbol that force should only be a last resort, used only to restore balance.
But the story of justice doesn't stop with the Romans. Not even close. In fact, it's just getting going. The question of what is justice is something every single generation has had to figure out for itself. It's a moving target, and some of the greatest minds in history have taken a shot at pinning it down.
To see just how much our idea of justice has changed, let's just highlight three pivotal moments. We'll start way back with the ancient Greek idea of justice as balance. Then we'll jump forward to the Enlightenment to see justice as a kind of calculation. And finally, we'll land in the 20th century with the modern idea of justice as fairness.
For the great Greek philosopher Aristotle, justice was all about finding balance. He saw it as a kind of moral sweet spot, a middle way that avoids any extremes. In a just society, people get what they deserve. If someone is wronged, the goal isn't revenge, it's always to rebalance the scales and bring back social harmony.
Now, let's take a giant leap forward, about 2,000 years, to a completely different way of thinking. A philosopher named Jeremy Bentham, he wasn't interested in fuzzy ideas like balance or virtue. No, he wanted a scientific, almost mathematical way to approach justice. He called his theory utilitarianism, and it all came down to a simple, powerful, and frankly, very controversial idea.
And there it is. For a utilitarian, justice is just a math problem. Which action creates the most happiness for the most people? It's a totally radical idea because it focuses only on the overall result. If an action makes the majority happy, it's considered just, even if it comes at a terrible cost to a minority. And that, right there, is where a lot of people started to get really uncomfortable.
You see, that greatest good idea has a pretty dark side to it. What happens to the people who get left behind? This question really bothered the 20th century philosopher John Rawls. He argued that justice isn't about a calculation at all. It's about fairness. And to make his case, he came up with one of the most brilliant and famous thought experiments in all of philosophy. It's called the veil of ignorance. Okay, imagine this. You get to design a brand new society from scratch. You can make any rules you want, but there's a catch. You have no idea who you're going to be in that society. You could be rich, you could be poor, you could be healthy or sick, part of the powerful majority or a vulnerable minority. Rawls's incredible insight was that from behind this veil, we would all choose the fairest possible rules because you'd want to make sure that even the person in the worst possible situation is still treated with dignity, because after all, that person could be you. So, where does all this leave us? We've seen the idea of justice grow from a search for balance, to a mathematical formula, to a thought experiment about absolute fairness. What this journey really shows us is that justice isn't some fixed point we arrive at. It's an ongoing conversation. It's a question that every generation has to answer for itself. So the real question isn't just what is justice, but what kind of justice do we want to build for ourselves right here and right now?